Going to pass this back and forth.
Cool.
Okay, I believe we are live. I'm here with Donny Starkins. Let's give it a minute to make sure that we're live on all channels. And today we're going to talk about what it was like for Donny to relocate to a new area. Donny's clean and sober, been clean and sober about 9 years. So if you're considering moving to a new area or relocating to a new area, this might be something that you want to check out. So yes, we're live on all channels. So Donny, you've been clean and sober for about 9 years, and recently, about 7 months ago, you relocated to Encinitas. So I guess first off, why did you decide to relocate?
Yeah, so sober 9 years. My sobriety birth date is May 5th, 2013. And why I located, well, I went through some transition in my life. I went through a breakup, and prior to the breakup, I wasn't really attached to Phoenix, Arizona, or Scottsdale, where I lived. Where I'm at in my life right now, I can really work from wherever. For a while, I was building a yoga community back in Phoenix. And before the pandemic, I was teaching a ton of classes in studio and eventually transitioned into coaching. I've been a personal development coach for the last 4.5 years. And so as I started to teach less yoga and more coaching, most of my coaching is done virtually, and I travel and work with some athletes, but I don't necessarily have to be in Phoenix. And so as I was going through that transition and going through the breakup, I was visiting a buddy out in San Diego, and I was sitting there on the Del Mar Dog Beach with one of my French bulldogs, and it was sunset. And I just had this moment where it was like, why don't I just move here? And the ocean's always been calling my heart, but I've just never, I visit and I love it. And I'm sure a lot of people love it, but it really had this pull for me. And the story I was always telling myself was I could never move here. But there was a moment of clarity right there where it was like, why wouldn't you just move here? And within 2 weeks, I packed up all my stuff and I relocated to San Diego. I live in the Del Mar, Solana Beach area, and it has been one of the greatest moves that I've ever made. And it took a lot of courage in the beginning, because ultimately I've lived in Phoenix almost my whole life and built this community. And so there was massive change about to happen. But I just knew my location needed to change, and I couldn't ignore the calling of my heart to be near the ocean. And so that's how it started.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is it wasn't like a geographic, because a lot of times when people are clean and sober and their life is falling apart, they think, I just need to move. I need to go to Encinitas. But I'm hearing you say that wasn't the case. You were solid in your sobriety, which I'm going to pass the microphone to you. So how did you feel about your sobriety before you moved? One, and two, were you concerned because your community, your sober community, is in Phoenix, in Scottsdale? Like, that's where all your people are at. That's where your sponsors at. That's where your home group was at. That's where all the meetings you went were at. And so moving to a new area, were you concerned, and how did you handle that?
I wasn't concerned about my sobriety at all. There was a piece of it that did somewhat feel like a geographic, but it had nothing to do with my own sobriety. It was just fresh perspective and a fresh start. And the relationship I was in, we had kind of intertwined communities, and we knew a lot of the same people. And so going out to San Diego and having those moments, this was like my opportunity to have a fresh start, fresh perspective. And there was nothing tying me to Phoenix anymore. My family's there, but San Diego is so close that it just felt like this was my time to do this. And so as I was visiting my buddy prior to moving, I went to a couple meetings, and these 2 meetings that I went to specifically, there's great sobriety in North County, San Diego. And both the meetings I went to are actually inside of bars. One is at the Belly Up Tavern in Solana Beach, and they have meetings there every single morning, bright and early. And then there's a men's meeting at another bar across the street every Friday at 6:45. And I went to those 2 meetings, and I was like, wow, this feels even more like exactly what I'm supposed to do. Because of that, I saw it. I saw that the sobriety was solid. We're pretty spoiled in Phoenix and Scottsdale. There's amazing recovery. And I think it's as good as Phoenix, where I was moving to. I saw that very clearly. So that, and also having one of my best friends who was in sobriety, who's also already rooted in the community in North County, San Diego. So knowing I had that, and you can go to meetings, and I know there's meetings probably in other parts of the country where they might not feel so assuring, the community, but where I attended these 2 meetings, I was like, oh yeah, even more reason to be here. So the recovery and the sobriety always has to come first. So going to those meetings, it was very clear, like, I feel good. I feel safe about this. And, I'm not going to be alone. And I've been in my relationship for 7 years. I've been in this community, grown this community in Phoenix. And so moving, I've spent more alone time in the last 6-7 months than I have probably my entire life. But I've been staying in the work. I've been staying in my program. I have a coach. I have a therapist. I'm doing all these things for support to navigate through change. And I think sometimes the brain doesn't like change, and it can be scary. And so we end up kind of defaulting, or we're not stepping into something unknown. But in order to truly step into the unknown, you got to die to the old, and you have to let go of the way we thought our life was going to be, because it never really is that way. But there's also the trust in God, or your higher power. Like my higher power, who I choose to call God, was also such a big piece of this. There was just like this unwavering faith that I had, that I knew that everything was going to be okay.
Nice. And by the way, we're actually in Sedona, Arizona, and we were at a retreat, yoga. Donny hosted a yoga wellness meditation retreat this weekend. It was amazing. It was transformative. And we're actually at this amazing Airbnb. And I tried to set up the camera, but I don't really have the setup. We have an amazing view of Sedona from here. But unfortunately, we weren't able to pull it together. So you get to see our living room at the Airbnb.
You could have seen the view, but you wouldn't have been able to see our faces, which maybe that would be better. But
yeah, I know. Who knows? Okay, so next question. You already partially answered this. What did you do to prep for your move? Like, what was the pre-work that you needed to do? Because I know that you made your decision pretty quickly, but even making the decision pretty quickly, I know that you did a couple of things which just gave you further confirmation. And so what did you do to prep for your move, to make sure that you were you had as much of a 3-point landing as possible?
Well, I kind of got through the breakup, and just knowing the importance of having a support system, friends like you, my friends in sobriety, having a therapist. I was already bringing in the team to go through this major transition in my life. So that was kind of the pre-work, the therapist to just help me work through all of the change that was going on, and just my own stuff that I was working through in regards to the relationship. But just preparing and going to meetings before I left, and having those meetings planned out. Like, I went to those meetings when I was visiting my buddy to see if I would resonate with the people and the guys. So I was proactive in knowing part of this trip was kind of just going out there and visiting my buddy and getting, I knew a few friends in sobriety out there, but not a ton, nothing like I had in Scottsdale. So it was just reaching out to my close friend out there, one of my best friends, Andrew, who lives out in San Diego, and just having him from an accountability standpoint. But it's really just staying in the work, staying in my morning routines and rituals, prayer, meditation, journaling, moving my body every morning. It's kind of similar, some of the same practices, and just not getting away from them, even though I'm in a different location with a little bit less, or a lot less accountability, at least in the beginning.
Okay. And what did you do? So you've been there for 7 months, and I guess the first month you were there, the first couple of months you were there, like, what did you do, and how were you? Because I've been there, I visited you. You've built quite the community in a short period of time. You've been there for 7 months, and it's like everywhere we go, you have people that people that are in recovery, people that are doing the deal, and you've already attracted like-minded people into your life. So I guess what actions did you take to get plugged in and build your community in Encinitas?
Yeah, so great question. And I think for me, it was being proactive. So before I moved, anybody that I knew that knew somebody in that area, I asked them to connect me. Like my closest friends, people that knew, or maybe they found out I was moving. Or once I moved there, maybe they saw some pictures of me being in California, and I would just be like, who do you know? Who's like do you know anybody? Do you know any awesome people that maybe would vibe with me? And I set up coffee meetings, and I just met anybody that was introduced to me, just making those connections. I also started to teach some yoga classes in the community in San Diego and the Del Mar area because I wanted to integrate into a new community and bring people into some of the other stuff that I do. Community is everything. As we know, the opposite of addiction is connection. And I could not move there and just isolate. Solitude was important for me. I think to take a step back and have that alone time, and moving to a place for me that really resonates in my heart, like the ocean, it's it's easier to be in solitude. Where if I was somewhere else, maybe for me personally in the Midwest, where there maybe isn't a lot of nature to get outside, I would probably feel a lot more alone or lonely than actually being in solitude. Solitude is what I needed, and it wasn't always easy. I mean, to sit there and not have many distractions and really just have to sit in your own stuff and work through that. There were times where the way that I would typically numb out when I was starting to have those little waves of loneliness would be just to grab my phone and get on social media and kind of numb out that way. But I'm aware of it. And I always say awareness is the first step in creating any kind of change. And it still comes up today, but it doesn't have the grip it used to have on me. So being proactive, getting into the community, relationships and meaningful relationships is one of my core values. In order to have meaningful relationships, you have to have meaningful conversations. So they say your vibe attracts your tribe. And so what's been really cool is there's been amazing people in the North County, Solana Beach, Encinitas area is a very spiritual community. So I just feel like I've really been able to bring in some awesome people that are on the same page, that are actually have more depth than me. We always talk about how we don't want to be the most valuable house in the neighborhood, right? Because if we are, then all of those houses below us bring the value down. So I've surrounded myself with people that they have something that I want. So I see it in them. I'm like, oh, I want to get close to them, because we talk about it like you don't want to be the smartest person in the room. It's that same analogy. So just kind of knowing people, knowing meditation teachers like David G, who lives in Carlsbad. He's if you're looking for some guided meditations, he's amazing. He lives out there. And I would just connect with these people, reach out to them in their DMs. Some people might get back to me, some people didn't, but it was just really taking action on connecting with other human beings, however that needed to look. And that has been really the foundation and the game changer for me.
So how are you feeling about, I guess, your community today? And you're there, and you've got your morning routine, your morning ritual, all of your rituals, you're teaching yoga, you've got your people. So are you feeling, are there any, is there anything that you would have done differently? How are you feeling now? And is there anything that you would do differently?
I would say, I mean, the easy answer to that is no, I wouldn't do anything differently, because if I would have known better, I would have. But just looking back, I don't think so. That's a great question. I mean, there's nothing I really regret. I mean, I just think part of it is just sitting in some of that discomfort and being okay with being alone, and really just being mindful of how much time I'm using to numb out, whether that would be on the phone, or another way for me is just to fill my schedule and get busy with other things. So I think just less screen time. The ocean has really taught me. I'll go out on walks on the beach with my dogs and be out on the water, and it's teaching me so much, and the importance of connection and the magnitude of the ocean and the consistency and the flow of the waves. And so I'll get out there and really feel at one with God or with nature, and then come back inside and grab my phone, and then I immediately lose that connection. Or when I moved, the football season was going on, and I used to just default and watch a lot of football. And on Sundays, I would go out to the beach and then come back and just plop down and watch football and then immediately lose that connection again. So the ocean has taught me a ton just about the importance of getting outside and getting into nature and doing whatever it takes to quiet your mind and really open up the heart, because going through transition and going through breakups and just pain in general can really shut us down and close our hearts. And it's really our brains that are trying to protect us and keep us safe. So I just try to stay in the practices that are going to keep the heart open. Right. And I think it's just chipping away every single day with some of these routines and rituals and these non-negotiables that really allow me to be the best version of myself every day. Because if I take those rituals away, the commitments and the promises I make to myself every day, things just get messy, and I'm not comfortable in my own skin, and I don't like living in that state.
So it sounds like this time it's working, right? You've moved, you've relocated in the past, and it hasn't worked. So let's talk about the difference. What did you do when you relocated in the past and it didn't work?
Yeah. So my very first crack at rehab, I went to a treatment center and then moved to Cincinnati, Ohio. So the typical geographic change. Got out of rehab, lasted like 3 or 4 months, stopped doing the work, stopped going to meetings, all of the things that you hear. And I was right back. All of my problems had followed me. So what's different is I wasn't doing any work. I wasn't going to meetings. I didn't have any type of like accountability. It was almost like way less accountability because none of my family, my immediate family was there. I had some cousins, but I just isolated from all of them. Definitely didn't go to meetings. I tried a few meetings there and they weren't resonating with me, or I just wasn't ready and I wasn't listening in those meetings and judging and saying, oh, these aren't for me. So I definitely wasn't willing to do any of the work. So that's the biggest thing. And I was just right back in my addiction. And so the difference this time is obviously I have a foundation of when I moved, it was 8+ years of sobriety, 8.5 years of sobriety. And it's being proactive and making sure that you have people around you and layer upon layer of accountability and people that are going to hold you accountable, call you out on your shit, and really just make sure that you're not slipping away. Cause my default is just to isolate and stray away. But I've also had 3 years sober and strayed away from the middle of the herd and got picked off. And yeah, that relapse sucked. But it taught me a lot, and it was actually the best thing that ever happened to me. And it's one of the most important parts of my story, because it reminded me that the work will never stop. And it's just not the work in sobriety. It's all of the work, the heart work, soul work, personal development, physical health, mental health, all of it. Like, it can never stop for me. There's really no turning back. And there'll be days where I might be doing things half-ass, and I feel it. I feel it viscerally in my skin or in my bones when I'm not doing that. And it's just, I'm so miserable in that place that I just don't do it anymore. I'm not going to say I don't ever do it, but the non-negotiables and the practices are key. And I had none of that back, when I did the geographic, and it wasn't working out well. And things just got ugly really, really quick.
What advice do you have for the person that's planning on relocating? What tips? Like, let's boil it down to bullet points. I've heard you talk about a lot, including building the community. And when building your community, you want to surround yourself with people that have what you want, right? And so it's getting uncomfortable. It's continuing to practice your rituals and your routines. Really, it's human connection is kind of the main thing that I've heard you say. But give me some of your, I guess, your top 3 tips.
Yeah, if you don't know anybody in sobriety to where you're moving, then find 5 of your friends in sobriety of the place you're currently at before you're going to move, and check in with them every single day. Ask them, please stay on me. It's all about having a plan, because not having a plan is having a plan. And a lot of times for people like us, not having that plan is ultimately planning to relapse. And even though that relapse might not show up in a day, a month, could be a year, but again, it's like they say, the relapse happens before it actually happens. So just watching for that change, and I talk about self-sabotage a lot in my coaching that I do, and just watching for that, because that little voice will come up. And so we have to really stay in the practices. I think morning routine is number 2, because a morning routine completely changed my life. I know you have one. Yours is probably way more dialed in even than mine is, but just having those 4 or 5 things that you're going to do every single day, hopefully most of those before you look at your phone in the morning. Really, things started to change for me when I stopped looking at my phone first thing in the morning. And maybe for you, if this resonates, that it's just tomorrow you breathe, take 10 deep breaths, and then look at your phone. And then you can start to build on it, like start really small, but have that morning routine. That's a game changer. And then I would say the third one is to plan out, get online and figure out where you're moving, where their meetings, so that when you move, they're already in your schedule. I do that traveling. Definitely did it way more early on in my sobriety, because that's what my sponsor told me to do. Was if I was traveling to a certain location, to get online and already decide what meeting you're going to go to while you're out in your new location. So whether it's a trip or a permanent move, plan out that first week and go to a meeting every single day like you're a newcomer, so you can figure out the meetings that work for you. I always say it's like trying on a shirt, and you try on a meeting. If you don't like the meeting, take it off and try on another one. But that little sabotage voice will come and make excuses like, oh, this place doesn't have meetings for me. And then we just kind of give up on it. Keep going to meetings, tell the people at these meetings that you're new, talk to people at the meetings and say, hey, I need support. Like, you got to get real and honest and put yourself out there. Every single meeting, like, just share, I'm new to the city. I would love to have some accountability. If I could grab some phone numbers, like take the opportunity to try to share at those meetings and tell them that you're new. And I don't think you'll have to do anything after that, because the people will usually come up to you and give out their phone number. So take the action to make the connections, the human connections, even before you physically move there. Have a plan, have those meetings, and don't let anything get in the way of those meetings. Keep those commitments.
I like that. I know when you're new and you're within your first 30 days, you're going to announce, hey, I'm a newcomer. And because you're announcing that you're a newcomer, people are going to come up to you. And I've heard this before. I haven't relocated, but I've heard this from a lot of people. Having some time and relocating is a little bit harder. It's harder to build connections because you go to a meeting and you're not a newcomer. So you're not raising your hand saying, hey, I'm a newcomer. But to Donny, to your point, it's making that announcement. I'm new to this area and I'd love to make some connections and I'd love to make some friends is a great way. And also on that note, showing up early, being of service, staying late. Absolutely. Okay, good stuff. This has been great. I've gotten a lot out of it. And I just realized the topic of this is how to avoid a relapse when relocating to a new city. And Donny, why don't you tell people how they can connect with you?
You can connect with me. My website is just my name. It's DonnyStarkins.com. Instagram is Donny_Starkins. I have a coaching program called The Shift, Transformation of the Mind, Body, Soul, individual coaching, group coaching. I also have a podcast called Comeback Stories. I co-host it with Darren Waller from the Las Vegas Raiders, who I know has been a guest on your show. So check out the podcast and feel free to reach out to me anytime if you need anything.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Donny, and how to avoid a relapse when relocating to a new city. Peace.